I'm good. How about you?
Still alive.
Exciting time to be a university president.
Oh, yes, yes.
Okay, here we go. Hello, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening around the world. My name is Jared CARNEY. I'm founder and CEO of Lightdale, LLC, and also a venture partner with Spark Labs Group, the global accelerator and investment platform based between Asia and Silicon Valley in California. Thank you for joining a distinguished panel and discussion today with two experts who need little introduction, but I get to make a bit of one myself, for reshaping or renaissance of universities today. Joining me in the conversation, we have Michael Crow, president of Arizona State University, and Rich DEMILLO, who is professor of management and computer science, and until very recently headed the Center for the 21st Century Universities at Georgia Tech, Georgia Institute of Technology. Just brief introductions of our panelists before we dive into what I anticipate to be a uplifting and robust conversation. Michael Crow, as I mentioned, is president of ASU, where he is generally acknowledged as really leading the way in understanding the American, if not the new global university. He's also chairman of InQtel, the venture capital arm of the Central Intelligence Agency, and he's been in that role since 1999. He's had a distinguished career of various academic and government leadership policy roles, and is really kind of blazed a trail with ASU in terms of creating different revenue sources, upending the traditional model of academic performance and measurement of that performance, and creating relationships with corporate partners. Rich DEMILLO, who, as I said, is Distinguished Professor of Computing and Professional Management at Georgia Institute of Technology, Georgia Tech, founded the 21st Century Universities, which is a living laboratory devoted to change in higher education. Rich came to academia from industry, where he was the first chief technology officer of the Hewlett-Packard Company. He has a very long and very, very rich, excuse the pun, career, also in a variety of government as well as business positions. He's an author, and many of much of what he's written will inform our conversation today. He is a fellow of the AAAS and a fellow of the Lumina Foundation. Gentlemen, thank you very much for joining. This is a conversation really between the two of you. I don't need to participate too much, but hopefully I can help steer it a bit. Obviously, today, probably more than any other, institutions are on the mind of many of the people who are listening in, who will be asking us questions today. So let's start with a general question to you, which is, how important is the university and higher ed institutions in a society that sees the kind of health challenges that we have, that sees the political and social challenges that we have? Where is the university in that? Michael, you want to take first crack at that?
It's a weird sector, so we'll speak in generalities. And so, there are existing universities in Europe that have lived through all the great wars in Europe of the last 1,000 years, the plague, everything you can possibly imagine, and they're still extant, still moving forward. So I think that what's likely to happen in this sector is that it will continue to operate in a strange counter-evolutionary modality where there are various institutional types that seem to go on and on and on and on with perturbations that go on within the type. And then there are opportunities for new types to emerge. And so one of the things that we've done is we've kind of wrecked our thinking a little bit by thinking that Cambridge or Oxford or Harvard or Paris or one of these other schools is the type and that no other type will follow, when of course that's never been the case. And so I think that it's a weird thing. So in other sectors like the private sector, entire industries are wiped out. The horse and buggy industry, the entire sectors are eliminated by the forces of creative destruction. Whereas in academia, you can still find in the United States several hundred versions of Plato's Academy still operating on a 2,500-year-old model. And a few of them won't make it, but most of them will. What's most likely to happen as we encounter for the first time in our human existence a desire to accelerate at a very, very rapid level and at a very high level of complexity, learning and educational outcomes for everybody, for the entirety of an 8 billion person planet. None of the existing institutional models are adequate to that assignment, none of them. And so therefore, there will be the emergence of whole new ways of learning, whole new tools of learning, communities of learning, institutions that operate in different ways. And, I've been blessed to be a part of one and help lead one last almost 20 years, trying to break out and produce the next wave of evolutionary change in the United States, something we call the fifth wave, something I just wrote about in my new book called The Fifth Wave. And the purpose of this logic, and Rich gets all of this, is that new models of what we think of as universities will emerge. In this model that we're talking about, high speed, highly adaptable, technologically advanced, very diverse. All these things will now become characteristics of the new model. But that new model doesn't mean that the Amherst College is going away in Amherst, Massachusetts, because it's not. And it's going to keep doing the thing that it does. And so what you're going to see going forward, I think, are new kinds of things: networks of colleges, networks of universities, technological tools, technological empowerment, new kinds of colleges, new kinds of universities. And then I'll make one last point, and Rich can comment on this also. And you're going to see the market, which has largely failed, in my view, trying to enter into the deep educational space. They'll find new ways to partner and new ways to do things and new ways to bring technology out. So I think there's a huge opportunity going ahead and moving forward. And COVID, if nothing else, has accelerated everybody's thinking, or as my dad used to say to me before he whipped my ass, do I have your attention now? And so our attention has been gathered and new things will emerge. Behavior will change.
So Rich, Michael, as always, makes it very piquant. It's the new everything, as to use his term, and a fifth wave. First of all, do you agree with that? And let's talk about, what's really driving that wave. Unpack it down into bits and bytes, specifically technology.
Yeah. So it's right, but it's the leg of the elephant. I think, and the piece that intrigues me these days is the entry of higher education into the flow of economy. We have these ancient institutions in Europe that were deliberately set up as academies that were separate from everything else that was going on in the world. And you read the critics of the European universities post-Renaissance, and what did they say? They said they were outmoded institutions. They produced people that weren't connected with reality and society. And to a large extent, European universities have continued on that track. I think the thing that America added to higher education was a connection. Not a planned connection. I think it was largely opportunistic and accidental to economies. And you can kind of list the signal events that led to this. I mean, how did Stanford become so engaged in the wealth creation in Silicon Valley? It wasn't because some railroad magnate decided we're going to do that. It was the accidental co-location of students and faculty members at Stanford. But now what's happened is, and this gets to the rebirth or Renaissance question. Now everyone who has a stake in the marketplace wants to emulate that. They want to join that wealth creation process. And guess what? There's not enough wealth to be created to support that many institutions. I'm on an advisory group for AMA, and one of the discussions we have at AMA is how many medical schools do we need? You can argue that you don't really need more than one medical school, because what every other medical school is doing has nothing to do with medical education. It has to do with running hospitals and facilities and creating wealth in a certain sector. So Michael, I think you're right. I think that's where things sit. I think it's a much smaller viable economy than we think it is, and I expect to see the places without brands, without access to resources to continue along their aspirational tracks, sort of go the way of Antioch College, just kind of disappear from the scene.
So before we get to, for lack of a better term, winners and losers and sort of the winnowing out that's happening, I want to go back to something you're talking about here, Rich. You're talking about, it seems to me, of a shutting down of the democratization of higher education. Is that what this means?
To the extent that ever was a democracy, yeah.
Michael, do you agree with that? I mean, you left the Ivy League. You like the Ivy League to lead the ASU.
Yeah, I don't agree with it, but I don't think I disagree with Rich. What Rich is talking about is that new modalities will emerge, new ways to learn, highly computationally driven, and I agree with all of that. And whether or not the standard institutions will be the owners of that process or not, it's likely that most of them will not be. That the new types of institutions will emerge. We're trying to build one of them, and those institutions, including us, we will partner with every other partner that we can possibly find, and we will find ways. We're building a thing now called the Trusted Learner Network, which will allow an individual learner to be empowered as an agent of their own future by taking all of their learning experiences, Rich knows what this is, and then tying them all together and then expressing that to the consumer of learners, that is the people that want to hire them. And most colleges and universities won't do that. What they'll do at place X, place Y, place Z is just do what they've been doing because they think that the competition is otherwise. Now, democratization occurs when no one's left behind for an artificial reason. Will democratization accelerate? I think it will, but it cannot accelerate without technology, and it cannot accelerate without new kinds of institutions. The problem that we have, and I even feel this a little bit at ASU, is I get these snarky, half-baked lob shots over the bow of our ship saying, "What are you doing? You're off track. You're off channel. You're educating too many people. You can't be any good if you're very big." And I'm just saying, you guys can't count. You don't know that we now live in a 335 million person, obviously highly complicated country. Take a look at it. And so we've got to find a way to allow education to become more democratically empowering. I say that in the concept of what it takes for a democracy to work, which will require new kinds of institutions, new kinds of networks, new kinds of partnerships. And the older institutions, some of them will go away. I agree with Rich. Many of them will not, because there'll always be a market for certain kinds of learning experiences, always, because things are pretty big.
So diversity in the marketplace is a powerful notion. And as somebody who used to help run an economic think tank, I can appreciate that. But I think one of the things that people are thinking about, looking at the year that we've had in higher education in particular, and especially the financial impact. So I think we realized that many universities and colleges are operating on actually some pretty precarious business models, and may or may not actually be rational market actors. So let's talk about that for a moment, which is, what does it take to have the kind of scale that you're talking about, Michael, the kind of impact to innovate that you're talking about, Rich, where these new models come about? I mean, do you think that the fundamental economics of universities are going to change, Rich, in the short term enough so that there be disruption towards more innovation, as you see?
I think they've changed already. I mean, if you look at what's happened at Georgia Tech with our kind of full-throated embrace of online degrees, you take a branded degree that is in high demand, and all of a sudden you open it up to everyone. I stole this phrase from Michael 10 years ago. Open it up to everyone who can succeed in the program, and make it available to them at an affordable price. The market is rational to the extent that people rush into that, and so we've moved from a highly selective, very restrictive, kind of low aspiration master's program in computer science to arguably the largest master's program in computer science in the world, and expanded the national market for graduate education in computer science to boot. And we have discussions. We still have discussions. Kind of hard to imagine this, but we still have discussions about whether or not we should put a cap on the program. Why would you do that? I mean, how do you teach that many students? How do they get a quality education? If I'm an employer of the future, how do I know that I'm actually getting somebody who can give me the kinds of services that I want, who's got the flexible mind, not only the sort of the raw education? You have to be very intentional about it. So what you can't do, this is like new category creation in any company. What you can't do is use the same manufacturing methods and assume that it's going to be suited to the new marketplace. So when we started down this path, we said we are not going to teach online classes. We're not going to teach distance learning classes. We're going to deconstruct all of these classes and build what at the time pedagogy told us was the best way to deliver these skills and to assess how well the students were progressing through the program. And we were going to innovate in how we interacted with students in laboratories, and we were going to use peer assessment. We were going to have a slew of industrial partners that would tell us in real time whether or not we were hitting the mark, missing the mark, and how to do that kind of course correction. The price of that is pretty steep. So like any new business, you had to kind of pick up what you thought you were doing and move it over to this other room where no one knew what was going on in the previous world, and rebuild everything that you've done. I don't think there are many places that can do that. I mean, I've seen. Michael, I've seen Arizona State, the amount of effort you put into doing things in a new way. If you had to run that through 25 committees every time you wanted to make a move in one direction or another by 5 degrees, you'd still be back where you were in 2002. And so these things don't happen by themselves. I think leadership is a really important part of this, but also understanding that there is kind of human nature that you're playing with here, and you have to deliver value to students, or they're not going to come back. And you can't rely on your brand to carry you through that.
Michael,
I think what I would add, you started with the phrase, Jared, rational market actors. Well, the market for higher education is dominated in the United States, at least, by the object lesson of scarcity and the production of Lamborghinis and Ferraris by institutions that use scarcity as the method to drive up their price. And there's, of course, nothing wrong with that. There's plenty of markets that operate in that sort of space. The issue then, though, is that for everyone else, most of the publics and everyone else, rational market thinking isn't possible because most universities are trapped in 2 bureaucratic vice grips from which underperformance is the only outcome. The first is government manipulation by those that provide some funding to the institution and then want to guide every aspect of the institution, because you can't really run effectively a university under that kind of bureaucratic model. And the second is the bureaucracy inside the university itself. And that is, it's probably right behind the post office as the, one of the most bureaucratic institutions that exist. And so the notion of forming what we call the enterprise model, public enterprises. So think of a private university as a private enterprise, largely operating on a market of scarcity and operating in a small realm, and then a public enterprise university now operating in a different modality. And that would mean then, therefore, like us, 92% of our revenue of $3.8 billion this year is derived from market transactions where we're competing against others. We get very little core support from any government whatsoever. That has then forced us to act and behave in entrepreneurial ways, in creative ways, to embrace partnerships, to embrace technology, to move these things forward. And so what we are now arguing is that if you want more successful outcomes from public universities, you've got to move them from the public agency model of structure and behavior to the public enterprise model. And you also have to do one other thing, which you have to free the faculty from the slavish structure of the post office model of universities, which is that everybody's in their little department doing their little thing, arguing to keep other departments from getting additional resources beyond their resources, which then holds everybody down. So except for leadership, the Georgia Tech computer science degree never would have happened. I mean, it would have been beaten down by the rest of the faculty. We have 80,000 online degree seeking students now this academic year across 250 degree programs. And that requires us to operate and behave in different ways. And so rational market actors is essential for the success of large scale higher education going forward, period.
So
and that's almost impossible for lots of people to even grasp.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's impossible, especially when so many people feel like there are existential threats from without the university, not just, challenges and fundamental shifts going on within. So there's so much to talk about here, and we actually don't have enough time to get to everything. A lot of talk about partnerships. Let's take a moment, gentlemen, and talk about what a partnership really is for the benefit of the people listening and who want to understand what the future of universities, because both of you have spent a lot of time imagining and putting into action these partnerships. Rich, what's an example of the best possible partnership between a university program and a non-university entity in your experience?
So it's rare, and I'm not sure it's fair to say what the best one is. I can tell you about the one I'm thinking about right now. So I've been asked to launch a new school at Georgia Tech on cybersecurity and privacy, and the only thing that makes it interesting to me is the rapid growth of cybersecurity as a profession. So when I think about how we educate engineers and computer scientists today and contrast it with what I want to do with this new school, the image that keeps flashing in my head is the relationship between a school of public health and a medical school. So my school of cybersecurity and privacy is the public health component of Georgia Tech, and that sort of takes you out of disciplinary stovepipes immediately. You have scientific pillars that you have to rely on. Everyone has to agree on terminology and practice and credentialing, but it doesn't make any sense if it doesn't work. It doesn't make any sense if the world isn't getting better as a result of what you're doing. So everyone becomes a partner. We can build a highly ranked program. I'm absolutely sure that we can build a highly ranked program that will be at odds with what industry needs. And if we do that, that's a mistake. That's treating public health as if it were a branch of medicine. And we have to have all of these companies in the Southeast region, in the Atlanta area, that have built their wealth on the basis of interactions with Georgia Tech agree now that they have to come inside the university walls and participate in the program. What does that mean? That means practicums, internships, professionals from the companies becoming professors of practice in the program, taking ownership for the fiscal responsibility of administering that kind of program. People scatter to the hills when you start talking about commitments like that, but not all of them do. And so there are enough of these companies that are looking out over a 5-year horizon, sometimes a 10-year horizon. So I see how this is going. I see where my workforce is going to have to be. It's not going to get to where I want it to be without my active involvement. That's the kind of relationship that I want with our partners. People will tell you about all kinds of partnerships when you're sitting on the other side of the desk in industry, and a university comes and says partner to you. You usually run screaming for the hills, because that means they want research dollars to equip a laboratory or support professors. That's not what we're talking about.
Michael, how many partnerships does ASU have now?
Well, so partnerships is one of our main element of our strategy. So we have hundreds, probably in the low thousands of partnerships. We have partnerships in educational technology, 300 very significant relationships. We have innovation partnerships. We have a partnership with the Mayo Clinic. We didn't want to build a medical school, but we wanted to be a part of a medical school. So they started a second branch of their medical school here with us. And so they become our clinical partner in all things without us having to make those kinds of investments. We have the Plus Alliance, which is King's College London, University of New South Wales, and ourselves combining intellectual assets. We've got a new kind. I'm building up to one that I'm going to use as the example. We have this new partnership with Centana, which is an educational management and learning services company, where we're taking our learning assets and their educational management and financial wherewithal, and we're going to universities around the world. We just launched a big deal in Costa Rica 2 weeks ago with U Latina, where we now are upscaling and up-teching and up-empowering on a national service university model. Universities in Costa Rica, universities in Turkey, universities in Egypt, universities in other places. So that's a new kind of partnership for us. A good example of a partnership for us, which does exactly what Rich has said that we need to do, which is to avoid my hand is out because I'm a greedy little bastard university. And a partnership to us means you're paying us. A partnership is you're giving us stuff. Is our deal that we just did with Dreamscape Immersive. So Dreamscape Immersive is a full virtual reality avatar-driven entertainment company coming out of a guy named Walter Parks and Steven Spielberg and other big Hollywood muckety-mucks. They built this entertainment thing and then thought that it had an educational learning application, but hadn't gotten that far yet. We partnered with them. Partnership means Series C investment in the company by a spin out of ASU. It means co-development of new technological applications. It means co-development of ways that we're going to move forward with new advanced virtual reality avatar-driven learning content. That's a partnership. And so that partnership is up and it's running. We launched it during COVID. It'll be fully operational with content by February. That is unbelievable ground-shaking content in biology-based learning, science-based learning, STEM-based learning. And so that's the new kind of partnership that we're working toward. Now, we're a little bit weird, as Rich knows. We will do things that others won't necessarily do, but those are partnerships for us. And they do involve partnerships and equity and engagement and third-party finances and venture capital partners and technology partnerships, all those kinds of things.
And so really,
if I can, there's an element of culture shift that you need to make that happen, and I've seen it happen at ASU. I've seen it happen here. I think a lot of places struggle with it. There's a distrust. There's a cultural distrust in academia about participating in commerce. And that translates into disadvantaging spending that benefits a company, that benefits the private sector. So I think one of the things that we should be talking about as an industry is who is speaking for that shift, that we are sort of all responsible for this place that we live in, and why would a private venture participate in that activity if they weren't going to be able to reap some benefits from it? And we don't really talk to people about that when they assume leadership positions in universities, and we don't vet that as we hire lawyers and all of that stuff.
Well, let's fast forward ahead in time. Are ASU and Georgia Tech competing against Google University and Facebook University? I mean, at some point, does the company then take matters into their own hands and say, you know what, we're just going to educate our own workforce the way we're going to do it, and we're going to figure out a way to lock up human capital for a long period of time? And you know, the culture issue that we have and the retraining that we have to undertake when we get people into the workforce, these are such huge issues, and they cost so much. It would just be better for us to have, to have a workforce that is, more indoctrinated. Is this a good thing? Is this possible? Do you think that happens?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if it's a direct. I mean, Google and Salesforce and all these other guys, they need to do everything they can to get the skill sets that they need and the training levels that they need, and they will do everything they can. The same way the U.S. Marine Corps picks officers. So to be an officer in the U.S. Marine Corps, you have to be a college graduate. Then you go to officers candidate school, determines whether or not you can be an officer. Then you go to 6 months of the basic school to make you a platoon leader so that every Marine officer can be a platoon leader. Then you go to your specialty school, infantry officer, landing vehicle officer, aircraft pilot, whatever it happens to be. Then you go to your command school. Then you go to the fleet. And so this notion that somehow these are disconnected processes, they're all connected and all connectable. And what we do is we've just got frustration out here, partly because of what Rich talks about. This disconnect between the universities and companies is cultural, except for the payment by the companies to the universities for ways to burnish their own brand because I made a big investment at MIT. So therefore my brand is better because I made a philanthropic investment at MIT. Nothing wrong with that. But I mean, that's the nature of the relationship now. It's kind of one-sided, at least in the transactional space. And so are they in competition? I won't say the name of the company, but I had senior officers of a 1 million person corporate training academy in here not too long ago saying that we're on the borderline of revolt. Our workers do not want to be trained only as coders. They want to know why they're doing what they're being asked to do. Do you have any philosophy classes that you could help us teach? And the answer is we're going to have to bring all this stuff together at some point. And we're going to have to think about what we call at ASU universal learners and universal learning across their entire life. Maybe they left high school and got trained up as a coder, and they worked for fantastically at a high wage working for a company. And then at age 28, they decided, what am I doing? I want to do other things with my life. But I didn't go to college. I know how to code, and maybe that's enough for some people, but that's not enough for all people. And so I think these things are not in competition. I think they're all complementary, but we haven't even figured out how for them to be complementary.
Yeah, and I think it's the history of higher education, particularly in this country, is wave after wave of new entrant. Sort of making the argument, well, you guys are morons. You didn't do what you should have done as a university, and then not being able to acquire students, not being able to make the case that the money they're charging for this training has any value long term, and all you have to do is look at successful institutions and see that year after year, decade after decade, century after century, people keep coming in droves to them. Why? It's not because of the football team. It's not because of the colors. It's because there is some intrinsic value in what they do. I think we downplay that. As someone who's written a lot about technologically mediated education, I think people misread what I write as being obsessively focused on skills, and I do focus on skills, but we perversely call the kinds of skills that Michael is talking about non-cognitive skills. These T-shaped skills, these soft skills, the things that study after study tell us matter most in a person's life, are as difficult to learn and as difficult to measure as any other skills that we teach a human being. But we don't focus on them that way. We assume that somehow you're going to osmosis through the air, the ability to become a good team member, to learn judgment, or learn ethical behavior, and it's simply not true. You have to start at a very young age. You have to rinse and repeat, and reward success and point out failure, just as you do in math and hitting a tennis ball. And that's what learning is. It's as true for these non-cognitive skills as it is for things like coding and constructing a grammatical English sentence.
So let's shift the conversation. We started at the end of things and how things might change in terms of the outputs from higher education and university. But let's talk about inputs. You talked about the young people and what seems to be a kind of continuous, if not insatiable, demand, Rich. And we always seem to be falling back on business language and market language, which is comfortable for me. And I know for you too as well, though obviously gets us into hot water with a great deal of academia. So let's talk about the supply. So how are students arriving? First of all, how are you finding students in this competitive environment where you have to more aggressively manage a funnel, I imagine? How do you find them, and who are they? Are they changing? Do you see ways that students are arriving differently today than perhaps pick a period of time once before? So this is all getting towards characterizing what's going on the campus of today. But Michael, you want to talk about who your incomings are?
Well, we've departed from the path of other universities. I think, I came here 18 years ago from Columbia University, and I think people thought maybe my job was to turn ASU into a newer version of UCLA or a better version of the University of Michigan or something like that, which would have meant the easy way to do that is just to keep all the B students from high school from being admitted and build a medical school, and we'd be done. Because our rankings would go up dramatically, and our quality would be perceived to be dramatic, and our graduation rates would be unbelievable. And I'm not downplaying those schools. I have two children that went to UCLA, so I love the school, but that's not the school we're building here. So we're building a school that's built on the premise of inclusion. And we take, by whatever path we can find, everyone qualified to do university level work in whatever way we can find them. And we pursue them. And those that aren't qualified, but have desire, we have ways to put them into pathways to make them qualified. And so that has meant then for us that we now have we have a college pathways program, earning your way into the university with thousands of students on it. We have a digital preparatory academy that this semester for largely high school students has hundreds of thousands of learners take, at least one course, hundreds of thousands of learning activities going on. We never had that before. That's a new pathway. We've changed our relationship with community colleges. It used to be that community colleges were considered some second-rate thing. What an evil thing for someone to think. And so we've built hundreds of degree programs that you just move right into the university with. And so for us, by the way, and we get whipsawed and beaten in rankings and so forth and so on for taking on this particular pathway. I'm almost past that. Almost. Yeah. And so what we're doing, Jared, is that we've built multiple pathways. And yes, you can still come here as a 17 or 18-year-old freshman and immerse yourself with us and have this wonderful, full immersive experience. But that's now only one path to this. And I think the last thing that I would add is that we're doing everything we can to make certain that if you want to go to college at age 45, you can do that. If you want to pick up a second degree at age 60, you can do that. Because we think our society will be better as a function of that. Now, not everybody will do that. In fact, we're considered, I don't know what we're considered over here. I think we've been denigrated from time to time. People say, well, you're just turning the place into Walmart. I'm like, not really, and you're an idiot. But it is a kind of tense thing.
Right. Rich, we actually, I'm vice chairman of McKinley Capital Management, Anchorage-based money management firm, and we fund a program at Georgia Tech. There's great human capital coming out of that institution as we found it. But, we also think that people pretty much self-select into the quant field. That's, it's not something that you have to sell pretty hard, I think. Perhaps you have a different view on it, but, what's your view on the choices that younger people and people as they're, moving through life as lifelong learners are making really towards computational skills, computational career sets? And then how does that really match up for both of you against the future of work and what is human work?
So I think you have to pay attention, and assuming that a college application tells you something deep about what a student is aspiring to do 30 years from now is a fool's errand. Students will tell you when they show up on campus, what do I want to do? And I can just recount for you that when I was starting out as the dean of computing at Georgia Tech, we had a problem. This is right after the .com bust in 2002. We had a problem with students deselecting computer science as a viable career choice. Why? Because jobs were being outsourced to India. And every time you'd open the Wall Street Journal, you'd see some other company that was shipping programmers or programming jobs overseas. Why, as a parent, would I want to send my kids to a school where you learned how to do that? At the same time, I would interview incoming freshmen at Georgia Tech who weren't interested in computer science. They were interested in literature. They were interested in the arts. They were interested in the performing arts, but they wanted to use technology as a basis for that. They did not want to take a computer science course. Why? Because computer science courses were filled with gamers, kids in torn t-shirts and dirty tennis shoes, and those weren't the students. That's not how they saw themselves. So you had to kind of pick up this idea that media was using computation in a different way and move it out of the stovepipe of computer science, move it out of the stovepipe of liberal arts, and create this new thing that kind of listened to what the students wanted to do with their lives, and overnight that became the most successful major at Georgia Tech, and it became a successful major with women. It became a successful major with students that we knew were going to transfer out of Georgia Tech to a more broadly based institution, and we have repeated that over and over again. So I think the idea that you can take a cut in time and say, well, this is what students need in order to succeed is not going to cut it. It hasn't cut it with us. I don't know many places that can predict the future, but you do have to get out of your mindset of knowing what it is or thinking that you know what it is that the students want to do.
Michael, are you driving this bus, or are you kind of just hoping to make the bus depending on what the demand from the market is?
There ain't no bus we're hoping to make. Yeah, either you're driving the bus or you have no idea where you're going. And that's true at many levels. So I'm not saying that we're successfully driving in every hairpin curve that we hit, but we are driving the bus. We believe that there is huge opportunity in the United States for the emergence of, and I believe this personally, the emergence of new kinds of universities, what we call national service universities, scalable, focused on affordability, focused on success across the entire population. I think I heard this morning we have about 4,000 Native American students attending ASU from over 210 Native American tribes, and there's only 23 tribes in Arizona. The reason I bring that up is, we're trying to find a way to reach everybody, and so it's not about somehow raising our flag and saying we're a really great university because we denied admission to 95% of the kids that applied, and so therefore we're greater. We took every qualified student and moved them forward from every neighborhood, every community. We broke down every financial barrier. We graduated them at the same rate that we brought them in. And then we found other kinds of pathways. Now, that's not for every school. I'm not suggesting that every school needs to do that. And that's not the community college model. That's this, anyone can come and anyone can try. That's a pathway. And so you got to, if you want to make that bus work, that you got to drive that bus. You got to build that bus. In fact, you got to probably not have it be a bus. A bus is too old of a technology. So we're more in line with, this will sound funny, we're more in line with how would they have solved this 200 years from now when they no longer sat around and acted as stupid as we act now. And so, where we've gotten past some of these, right now, universities have become massive social class granting authorities. We grant social status, and we use that as a power to attract resources. Well, okay, that might be fine for some. You can't do that in public universities. I mean, you just can't. And so it's drive the bus. Long answer. I apologize, but it's drive the bus.
No, great answer. We didn't really dive into the human work, to borrow Jamie Mariotzis's term, dimension of this, because this, Rich, is really how we kind of measure, I guess, the human factor in computational advances, right? And what will always stay human, because we are certainly living in times now when machines can do more, and when machines are actually beginning to create more. So, I wonder if you have a view on the university's role in defining, if not actually solving or providing solutions to this very rapid evolution and continuum. Rich, did we lose you on audio?
I've lost microphone connection.
Okay, no, we have you back on the microphone.
Okay, great. Yep. So I missed the last 20 seconds.
Okay. So, Michael, do you want to take the question first, and then we'll bring it back to you?
Well, I could tell you were pitching that to Rich, so let me catch up. And so
I'll do it again.
No. So, this notion of we're going to have to do everything we possibly can to figure out how to scale, because we're at a tiny fraction of the scale. If you really think about human potential, we have so under-realized human potential that it is literally beyond belief. And so what we don't know is what can the 80 billion neurons with 10,000 synapses in the most complicated thing in the known universe called the human brain actually do if every person was empowered as a learner across their entire life. We still have people thinking that somehow it's going to be all bad if we eliminate truck drivers. Okay, is it really? And so aren't people, if they're freed from that job, going to be, and I say this with all respect, my dad, after he retired as an enlisted guy in the Navy, was a long haul truck driver from Nogales, Arizona to Detroit, Michigan. And so, and I went with him on a number of those runs. And so it's hard work, it's backbreaking work. And you might at some point want to do something else. And so I'll just say that if we were working where we could be working, the guy that's the truck driver today could be the truck logistics master of the future, making $250,000 a year with 40 trucks that they're managing with the robots that are working for that guy. You see, for that person, that man or that woman. And so what I'm saying is that we have huge potential once we break down the notion that only a few should be educated, only a few should be educated at a high level. And I attribute all of this, I say this not even half jokingly, to Plato. I mean, he screwed us in a lot of ways. He basically said there were three types of people: philosopher kings, who are the be all and the end all of the whole universe. And that's what universities think of themselves as often. And it's really an egregious error. The democratization of computer science at Georgia Institute of Technology to an unlimited number of students, ultimately and hopefully, is a powerful game-changing thing, because it says you can have access to these great faculty, this great program, no matter where you are, no matter what your circumstances are. We've got it at the right price. We've got this, we've got that. If we had that across hundreds and hundreds of ways to move forward and thousands of individual courses, we will begin the process of changing human potential dramatically.
Rich?
It's a heavy lift. Yeah, I mean, I'm foursquare. I got my education on this from Michael Crow, and when I came to interview Michael for that first book, this was a conversation that we had, and it's as true today as it was 10 years ago. The idea that you somehow gain in stature by limiting access to what you know and what you can do in life is a really it's a perversion of the mission of public universities, and we decided not to go down that path, and we've been rewarded for it. The difficulty is that you have to bring people along to do that, and you have to bring your alumni along, you have to bring your faculty members along. Hopefully you can bring the incoming students along, but to be honest, they're an easier sell than anyone else. It's the internal barriers that tend to bog you down.
So I call anybody born after 1996, which I think of as the full-throated birth of the internet at scale, as a Homo sapien.net. And so those of us that were born before 96 are just Homo sapiens. And so these Homo sapien.nets, empowered by these things on a planetary scale, all bets are off, all models are off, all changes are possible, and all potentials are possible. We just haven't figured this out yet back at the camps called colleges and universities.
So the challenge with the access to this and the supply being still, for the vast majority of people, limited to Platonic influenced institutions and driven ideals, that is really giving people cold sweats at night, is affordability. Mm-hmm. Affordability is just in our Q&A that we've been getting constantly and comments through this, we've gotten hammered on affordability. So I guess, draw a straight line for me, just so it's absolutely clear. You've mentioned it a couple times, gentlemen, here in this conversation, but draw a straight line for me between this kind of proliferation and scalability and true affordability, because it hasn't seemed to work that way in the past. We had that promise with standardized testing, right? That we were going to be able to create more rational entry method into higher education, post-secondary, that would allow people to be more price shoppers than price takers in higher education. But none of this has really worked out to be true. And people spend, large parts of their adult existences in debt, and not healthy debt for many people. So, and we don't have a ton of time left, but this is a major topic.
So two quick things. So the people that are writing about that in the chat space and so forth, they're on a critical thing. So the issue turns out to be, for the most part, a graduation crisis more than a debt crisis. More than half the people that go to college have debt and didn't graduate. You don't even have the benefit of what you took the debt for, because more than half the people that have gone to college in the United States since 1970 have no degree, because the system is so messed up that they're not even producing people qualified to attend. I mean, it's a long, long story. But on top of that, I'm into the 8th or 9th year of a 20-year commitment not to raise tuition more than 3% per year and to keep it as close to zero as possible, because we're deeply committed to the outcome notion of as low a cost as possible. But I will tell you that the last time I was significantly publicly ridiculed by the former president of Harvard, the former president of Princeton, and the sitting president of Tulane in a meeting at one time in New York City was when I said that we had to start worrying about cost. And they told me that only fools worry about cost, and that it's the defeat of higher education. Higher education costs what it costs in their minds. And these were 3 private universities. And they're just one. Those are private schools. Okay, you can do whatever you want. But on the public school side, it can't be the case. We have to find a way to eliminate the financial barrier to access for talented people that need to move on with their life. And there's lots of ways to do that. But more important than that, we need to start graduating the people that we're taking. Just to be clear.
So
Three-fourths of $1 trillion spent on Pell Grants since 1980, plus or minus. Less than half have a diploma.
So on top of that, I think you can do a lot to improve educational productivity in universities, and I will give you actual data. Georgia Tech, 41% of the students major in engineering. 39% of the students major in computer science. There are 10 times more engineering faculty than there are computer science faculty. Consider this, 40%, 39%, 10 times more faculty. Why? Because we figured out how to have a more productive faculty. It hasn't impacted our ranking, it hasn't impacted our stature, hasn't impacted our ability to hire faculty members or attract students. What it has done is bent the cost curve for the university, for the entire university. It's a concept that's rejected by the other 35 universities in the university system in Georgia. But it's a spreadsheet. There are no logarithms or square roots involved. All you have to do is add the columns up, and you see what the advantages are. And I don't know why you would continue to produce a product that was 10 times more expensive than it cost you to make it. Well,
unfortunately, we have to begin to wrap, if not actually wrap right now, because obviously the three of us could go on for a long time. I think that what our viewers and listeners were able to get from this conversation is that the language of change and innovation in universities is not that different really from the language of business and business innovation. And particularly in public universities, there are massive opportunities to create scale that actually can enhance and accelerate democratization into really worthwhile programs, if not even product. And to think of ourselves really as not just consumers of education as a moment in time, but really over a very, very long period of time, if not our entire lives. And it's been an honor to sit with two leaders who have accomplished and who are accomplishing so much in this field against substantial odds at times. But I think the wave is beginning to build behind you, gentlemen. So thank you for being at the crest of it, Michael Crow and Rich DeMillo.
Thank you, Jared.
Nice to see you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.